Nonprofit governance.
Nonprofit answers.
Nonprofit board.
Nonprofit management.
Nonprofit marketing.
Nonprofit resources.
Welcome to Nonprofit Everything, the podcast where hosts Andy Shurick and Stacey Wedding answer your questions about all things nonprofit.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Nonprofit Everything. I'm Andy Shurick. I'm here with my pal, Stacey Wedding, and we're here to answer nonprofit questions. The way it works is you send us questions, you email them to questions@nonprofiteverything.com, or find us other ways. That works too. And we will do our best to answer them. If we can't answer them, we'll drag a guest expert on to make them do it instead. And we'll pretty much call anybody. We don't mind. So if you have somebody you want us to bug, let us know and we'll do our best. I wanted to share, we got some pretty good feedback. If you don't want to send us a question, you can always just send us a compliment because that's nice too. So
it makes us happy. You make our heart happy when you do that.
It does. It does, because we hear like, oh, people are actually listening to it. So this is one we got. It said, your latest episode was such a ride. The way you tackled the board's dilemma about falling short on revenue targets and navigating tough expense decisions was refreshingly candid. And honestly, Stacey and I, if we're anything, we're refreshingly candid, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Right, Andy. I was going to say, I tend to try to be, sometimes I try to take the nice stance, but there's not always. I think I've gotten a little more, I don't know, what do you think? A little more edgy with my comments
I think maybe I've rubbed off on you a little bit. Maybe not in a good way. And so Stacey's inherited some of my snark over the years.
I think it's you and my husband, so I'm just going to blame both of
That's
you.
True.
So.
That's true. Jeff probably has a big piece of that. I probably shouldn't take any credit for it, to be honest. But yeah, send us questions. Anything you can think of is, and a while back we asked folks to send in questions that, like, not ones that they were thinking of, but ones that they would wish someone else would ask. And we got some really good ones then too. So please send us anything and we will do our best to tackle it. And with that, we're going to jump right in. Okay, Stacey, here's one for you. I'm leading our strategic planning sessions for our board and staff to map out the next 3 to 5 years. What questions, aside from the normal SWOT analysis, would you ask to get thoughtful responses from everyone? This feels like, before you answer, this feels like asking Stacey for like free consulting. So congratulations, you did it. You got it on the podcast.
Well, I'm so energized by the idea of asking non-SWOT related questions because we're all so familiar with SWOT, right? If there's any listeners not familiar with SWOT, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, although I'm guessing everybody is familiar with that sort of rubric that's been around forever. I nerded out when I read this question and was preparing for this podcast episode. And so I created several questions, but I obviously can't share all of them here. But I'm going to share the ones that I think are the ones I have had the most success with when I facilitate strategic planning with organizations. Starting on a macro level, like, what external trends are you seeing that could most shape or impact our work over the next few years? Because it's the getting down into the brass tacks that people tend to go toward in strategic planning instead of really looking at what's going on in the world around and seeing how are those shifts happening. So when you think about, just as an example, we can see in a lot of the data and research that donor retention is at an all-time low and continues to decrease, and that fewer donors are giving more dollars, but we're losing that donor loyalty. And that's been an ongoing trend. If you watch it over the last few years, that's come up. If you think about, policy changes and the way, just sort of federal administration, and everything that's happening with the administration. I don't know if there's a trend yet there, but I think we're starting to see some writing on the wall, and we did in 2025. If you think about technology and where it was 3 years ago and where it is today, that probably is a really good thing to be thinking about if you think about your demographics. So I would very much try to elevate people to and particularly board members can be insightful about this, because it's depending on their roles in other organizations, sometimes they're looking a little bigger picture and a more grandiose. So I would start with that kind of external trends question. I think that some questions that are like something that I always ask that I think is fun to sort of see what people say is like, if we could only accomplish 3 major things, right, in the next few years, what should they be and why? I think that can be interesting when you start to see where there's alignment, and are there things that are kind of themes that are bubbling up from that? And also sort of on that lens, what are we currently doing that like no longer fits who we are or where we're headed? Because Andy, you've seen this. How many organizations get caught up in just doing things like they've always done them? And nothing's outright broken with it, but they're just doing it to do it. Like it's status quo. Instead of taking a zoom back and saying, wait a minute, like, is this really the way we should deliver educational curriculum content? Like, or do we need to use a technology lens through this instead? Or, that's just an example. I think I would also encourage one fun question, but again, it gets people to bigger picture thinking. If our organization received a major unrestricted gift tomorrow, what would we invest in first and why? And that also kind of can start to shape. I mean, sometimes we just need to make sure we are paying all our bills, and that's not very strategic, but thinking about sort of getting people talking with possibility, the lens of possibility is really where you want to start, like in kind of a bigger scale. You've all probably heard or gone through that exercise of sometimes it's an end of the year exercise, like where are we going to stop, start, and continue? But I think that's sometimes interesting with strategic planning. Maybe it's what are we going to stop doing? What are we going to streamline? What are we going to delegate, to a community partner or someone else? Like, so that would be another thing that I would kind of keep in my toolkit as a potential question. And then something that is potentially good for board members to reflect on is like, what does this organization most need from its board in the next few years that might be different from today? And that's probably closer to the end of it after you've mapped out some of this other stuff, but trying to help craft what kind of team are we going to need, both staff-wise and board and volunteers. So that's probably a later stage question after strategic planning's, kind of been in motion for a while. But beyond just the questions, I guess I would just encourage, when you talk about wanting thoughtful responses, so many times people go into strategic planning and just on the spot throw out one of these questions. And some people do great with that and others don't. Like some people actually do good and want to process and want to see what you're going to ask. And they can provide you a lot more thoughtful, like some more thoughtful responses if they have time. And so I am a huge believer, because there's different learning styles, there's different ways people's brains work. Like, how do we actually help set them up for success by sharing some like primer info? And here's the big thing, like every person that's part of strategic planning, depending on how you're organizing it, has a different role with the organization and maybe has a different lens. So sometimes some context setting to start out, like here's a lay of the land, like of where we're at, where we're trending, if we have data that we've collected, even if it's just very like, I'm not talking macro data systems. I'm talking just any data we've collected, feedback from, clients we serve, from donors, whatever. Like, what data do we have that we can sort of share and start to dissect so that you have a baseline to move from and you're all hearing the same thing when we start out on this? Because sometimes that just helps people have the bigger picture to then be able to think more strategically. So that would be another piece of advice. So obviously you're talking, my love language, talking these questions, and I'm nerding out. So I hope some of this is helpful. Andy, what have I missed, or what do you disagree with?
Oh, I don't disagree with anything. I was just thinking that, like, just to give listeners the permission to like pause right now and just rewind and listen to everything Stacey said again, because there was so much in there. And so a couple of things that I pulled out that you said that I'd like to sort of follow up on if I can is one of the things that we miss in the SWOT analysis when we do that sort of canonical SWOT analysis, that the threats, we keep hitting threats that no one put in that box. Like we joke that no one had COVID in their threat box of their SWOT analysis. Like no one. Like probably the CDC Foundation didn't
Right.
have that in the pandemic in their threat analysis, right? So where's the threshold when we're talking about it? Because I feel like if someone had brought that to me and we're like in a strategic planning session and somebody goes, well, what about a global pandemic? I'd as a facilitator, like want to shut it down because it seems like such a remote possibility that why are we wasting our time talking about something that has like a 1 in a million chance of happening or a 1 in 100 chance of happening? So how do we, but at the same time, like that would be a stupid thing to do, right? Because it did happen and it would have been great if we'd prepared for it. Where do we draw the line when we're trying to think of questions to ask during the strategic planning session about what's sort of off limits because it's stupid or what's wasting everybody's time? Or, I feel like it's where would you go with a group that started talking about something that seems really, really remote, but you feel like, well, do you just let them go with it and like go like, well, let's put that in the parking lot, right? Or what's Stacey's strategy to kind of like to address something like that?
Yeah. So the way I handle it, first, I try to make it clear the session, like depending on how this is being organized and over what period of time, I like to have a session where there's no critiquing. Like there's an initial session where it's, let's put it all up there, because it gets people's wheels turning, even if it's unrealistic, and it gets them feeling engaged in the process. So to shoot it down initially shuts people down, and then they're not just open to sharing. So what I try to do is sort of, if I have enough time and the luxury of time in a process, is to be like, hey, today we're going to like do a little, daydreaming, and I might put some like parameters around that. So if I want to structure it a little more, to your point, Andy, like I might say, like, based on what we know about some of the data I shared with you, like, gosh, so I'm going to use a really good example that's top of mind for me right now. So I was talking to a nonprofit hospice the other day who was like, we used to be one of only like 7 or 8, and the only nonprofit hospice, but only one of 7 or 8, right, in the community. We are now we are still the only nonprofit hospice, but we are one of 250, or it's some outrageous amount. And they were like, and we saw the growth happening, and we didn't realize it was going to keep happening. So to me, like, that's a great example of when you're starting to see things trickle up. Like, that's where, like, using a concrete example like that for a group can help them start to, like, tailor in their thinking. And so the way the question's structured, the way you sort of maybe put a little bit of parameters around, okay, threats that we know that we all are going to put on threats, the economy, right? Like these typical answers, like the cybersecurity. I mean, those are real, but like, can we talk about that within our working environment? What would a cybersecurity threat do to our organization? So for me, it's about follow-up questions, like to try to like get them to narrow their thinking a little bit from the really big picture, which is not wrong to have the big picture, right? Like a pandemic, but to say like, what would that do to our workforce? Are there things and what's the likelihood? And like at some point, you start to then have people like naturally, I think the group process starts to sort out the stuff that's a little way out there. If you're facilitating the process in the right way, where the group is sort of selecting what they think is the most pressing priority. And you as a leader are also very much with your voice there at the table, because you're like, this is what we should be looking at, folks. I'm nervous about this, right? So
I was thinking back at the pandemic stuff. One of the things that like an organization that I was working with fell back on was a plan that they'd written for a completely different problem, where what would we do if there was this big issue where a whole bunch of people were out of work because of a government shutdown, and they were able to use that exact same plan for this new scenario because it was roughly analogous. And so they had this, they could use something that already existed, even though it wasn't for that exact specific thing. So I feel like maybe there's something in there about being able to convert like, what's the general solution for this problem? Maybe not a very specific solution for this specific problem. Because, again, these are all smart people that can figure it out on the fly. You don't have to have all the answers all at once, right? You just don't want to be caught, blindsided by something you don't understand. So one of the other things you said that I thought was interesting was the, like, addressing, and I think of them as legacy programs that you've had for years. I think one of the challenges I've seen folks have with this is they don't want to, if something exists and there's staff that's attached to it or potentially funding that's attached to it, then nobody ever really considers, is this something we want to continue to do? Because they're not looking at it from the, from the lens of, is this something that's moving our mission forward? So they look at it from a revenue and expense standpoint. Well, it pays for itself, but is it really moving our mission forward is, I think, a different question. How do you keep people focused on the mission specifically when they're having these kinds of conversations, and not on, does it make money for us, or does it, is it too expensive, or because I don't know, it's my lens, right? It always comes down to the money eventually, but maybe we don't start there.
You're asking so many great questions. I think that, again, the way I approach it is setting the guidelines or rules up for the conversation before it started, and then holding people to that. So saying to folks, this is a mission oriented. I want you to, for a moment, and I know some of you in the room, and acknowledging it, right? I know some of you in the room are chomping at the bit because you're like, how is that going to pencil? What is that going to mean for staff, right? And you're going to have your point in the process to help us think through that. But right now, what we really want to do, if we were looking at this just from a mission critical lens, what in the totality of all of our programs, like, where is this falling? Would we, like, in mapping it out, even like in a grid style, something where people can, like, what score would we give this from a 1 to 10 on mission impact compared to the 5 other things? And let's just talk through it. And we're also not making decisions today. So, like, people are so scared, right, about, oh gosh, if I say this now. And so saying, like, what we're doing is trying to really, like, analyze and dissect this in a way that then, like, if it comes out that that's our lowest scoring mission impact, then we have a strategic choice to make as we put together the other pieces of the plan and start to dive into revenue and expenses. And okay, I mean, because like you and I both know, Andy, you could have five programs that have huge mission impact, but are all, like, lost leaders from like, you're losing money on them. And then you could have one that's making a little impact, but, like, breaks even. And that you might say, we need to balance our portfolio, but you're not starting there, because it's starting there that gets people stuck. And then again, turns into, let me shoot it down. Let me tell you why that would never work. That's where people start to get, and it's like, this isn't the stage for you to use your judgment and discernment. This is the stage for you to actually, like, I want you to think about it through this lens, and we'll get to the other lens, but not right now. So I don't know if you think that's too loosey-goosey, but that's the way I tend to do it, because it's like it gives people permission, and it also lets the people who are more wired to look at those other components to let them know you're going to have your part. Like, it's just like, and I still want to hear your voice today about, where do you think the mission is? Like, I still want to hear from you, Andy, even though you're, like, the numbers guy, like, about, is this going to right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Say it sucks.
Part of the thing about strategic planning, and I think, like, having gone through so many strategic plans, like, for so many different organizations, either, like, from an external perspective where I'm helping them work on it, or an internal perspective where I'm either on the board or I'm part of the staff. Like, I can't even imagine, like, it's uncountable at this point. I think what I lost after years of doing that was that it used to be fun. Like, strategic planning for me used to be, this is where we get to sit down and talk about like what we could really achieve if the revenue was there, if all the pieces fit in place, if we had the resources that we needed, that if the community kind of rallied around this particular challenge or opportunity. Like, this is really something that, like, let's brainstorm all the cool stuff that we can do, both from a, finance and accounting perspective, but also from just a mission achievement perspective. That's a really fun thing to sort of bring external people in to have that conversation about. And so many strategic planning processes have nothing to do with that at all, because it's a checklist. They like start with like, here's how we do it. We're going to start by looking at your mission, and then we're going to spend hours deconstructing adjectives, which is totally, one of my, like, it's the first, like, for me, that's the moment I lose interest, when someone starts arguing with somebody else about what that word actually means in this context. And it makes me just want to just like, I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to get some stuff from the snack table. I'm going to be outside, and you guys come get me when you're done.
Because you might be here for several hours.
Yeah, it's my least favorite thing. How do you keep, so I know you're so, and this is so not really fair, but how do you keep strategic planning sessions from getting there and keep that sense of like fun and opportunity and getting like, because I know board members, they see, oh, we're doing another strategic plan, and they don't want to go because they've been through so many bad ones. How do you stop that?
Yeah, as simple as this sounds, one thing I actually tend to do is use different language around it, because language brings with it the history of those types of situations. So as simple as this sounds, like I generally don't love using the word strategic planning because of the baggage that comes with it, right?
Oh.
And so it'll be like, even this simple shift of, I want to like, will you help me? Like, will you help think about the roadmap for our future? Like it, and something that's just like triggers a different part of the brain that isn't like the, oh no, strategic planning. Mm-hmm. And then I think being really thoughtful, it has so much to do, Andy. Like, there are times I want to come in and do one particular strategic planning process because I don't use, it's not a one size fits all. And other consultants may have a one size fits all. And I think some do. They use such and such model. Like, I want to know, how much time does the organization have? I want to know, like, because, and we'll have to put a link. I'll make sure that we have a link in our show notes. I just had a little article or something that I did about like what strategic planning is not, right? Because how many times do you get someone who's like, oh, we have 4 hours and we want to create a strategic plan. And I'm like, no, like that is not going to happen in 4 hours. If talk to me what you mean by strategic plan, right? Anyways, but so some of this is also about just kind of like, so it's not only the language, but it's also like, how much are you willing to give to let the organization try a new approach to strategic planning? And a lot of that has to do with board and staff leadership, because when I get someone that says, use the same thing we've always done, right? Use the same process, that is mind numbing. And I don't blame you. And like, there's not much that, at least from an external standpoint, other than me pushing a little and saying, I have some new like ways that I think might be more, I've tried that before with some groups and they shut it down. And so some of it is an openness for leadership to try to like say, I'm still going to get you to the end where you're going to have something that's going to be a helpful tool for you. But are you open to giving me a little bit of latitude about how we get there? And I can lay it out for you and tell you what I'm thinking, but I need a little bit of latitude, because if you're forcing me into doing a traditional SWOT analysis and all the stuff that comes with it, you're going to get that kind of a process and you're going to get that kind of energy level, bottom line.
So I take it you're not a fan of the AI assisted all online strategic planning packages that they keep advertising to me. Have you seen those?
I have to tell you, I saw one the other day and I want to look into it more because I'm intrigued by it. Like, I want to be an end user to see what that experience is like. And I haven't been, just transparently, but I think it's a really good question, because maybe they're doing something like that's off the wall different. But if it's just like, my fear is it's going to be just more of the same of what we're talking about And I think there's a place for AI tools in strategic planning, absolutely. But to design your whole process, like I'm doing a process coming up with a group that I'm excited about because they allowed me the latitude. It's, it'll be 4 or 5 different sessions, each a different length and time over the course of 2 months. So it's not like this is drawn out for 9 months. And it will start with sort of a more fun, larger picture. Okay, you're sort of you're the journalist of your own story, whereas this organization in 3 years. And so it's sort of a different way of getting to some of those bigger picture questions we talked about and like the visioning mapping. And you can start to see, oh, what is your headline? What is your headline? And so I'm like energized by that because I think that kind of format is going to energize the room a lot more than, okay, let's look at the mission and not that mission and vision. You don't want to you need to make sure it still fits, but good. But let me tell you, back to your point about analysis paralysis over word choice. Absolutely not. Like I will not do that with a large group. I will say, we're going to spend 45 minutes. I want to get feedback and what words you hate or what words you don't. And then there's a little task force that's going to go and work on some options for you because that is mind numbing. And you're right. Like people check out right there.
Yeah. That and the 45-minute long conversation on what's the difference between a goal and a vision.
Oh. Well, that's the other thing. I like to get away from that term because I've literally had knockdown, drag out arguments with people, not arguments because I don't argue in the middle of a session, but people debates about people saying is that a goal or is that an objective? And is that a tactic? And I'm just like, I don't care can we just not worry about what we're calling it right now? Where are we trying to go? What are we going to do to get there? And how are we going to do it? Can we just leave it that? And let's not actually put any of those words around it because that is mind numbing too. Oh, you're bringing up I was feeling really positive and now I'm feeling a little like I'm breaking out in hives because we went this direction.
No, I think I mean, I going back to bringing some of the joy back to the process, I think is really important because it really is supposed to be fun. It's your opportunity to finally all those things that you think could be better. It's the opportunity to have license to be able to say those out loud and have somebody put them on a little Post-it note somewhere. That's the good thing about it. And unfortunately, it turns into this just drudgery that nobody wants to do because they've had so many bad experiences with it. It's too bad.
And can I just say, I gotta one final thought on this is to close out this piece is it is dreadful going into a strategic planning session because of all the bad experiences people have had with them. I mean, I will just say as a consultant and a facilitator, it's my least favorite part is the beginning of that session because generally most people are there with the most pained expressions on their face because of they know they're how much time are you going to waste of mine today, right? They're going in with that bias. And so I spend a lot of energy trying to figure out how we start it out to make them feel like it's going to be, again, if I have the latitude to do this, make it feel like something different. Today is going to be different and we're not going to do a cheesy icebreaker. So no worries. But here's an opening activity to get us warmed up for some of what we're going to do that starts to get the energy flowing and people feel good and they're talking about it. I lied. I just said I was going to wrap it up, but I have to tell you, Andy, one other, can I just share something that I heard about the other day that I was intrigued by and I'm going to look into. And for our listeners, feel free to look into it too. I was talking to a group who is very much, they're led by, their leader is very much a very practical numbers person, not probably the person you'd put out there is dreamer and not probably the person you'd put out there as the most creative human in the world. And they had, a donor that underwrote a strategic planning process that actually involved the requirement of it was to start from a strengths-based perspective instead of going too quickly, and making it so So this person was joking, telling me, saying, gosh, it felt like painful because I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to be la la land. Everything is positive throughout. And right. And that was a very real concern. Part of this process also meant every single person, there was something like 200 stakeholder interviews, not surveys, individual stakeholder interviews they did with a combination of their stakeholders. And as part of it, you also, not only did you get interviewed, but you had to interview 3 other people. And then you had to share what you heard. And this person was fearful because they're like, my board is never going to give us the time of day. My board will never want to do this. My board is going to be like, why are we paying someone to have us do their job? Right? Like, so all those natural things. Right. And ended up saying it was an incredible experience, and that the board became, and every person involved became so much more invested and had such a better understanding of strategic choices and decisions and how they're made, but also seeing things through the lens of somebody else. And we're the biggest advocates. It was an entire year-long process. That's a huge investment of time and I'm sure money. I don't know how much that cost, but I was intrigued because I thought, wow, like that's a whole new approach. I mean, I've never heard of that. Like, I'm the one that's doing those one-on-one interviews or surveys, and I'm not actually. So that was just interesting. And it made me go, see, once again, someone who's like maybe creating a model that's a little different. Yeah,
it's certainly time for it. Having been on both sides, whenever I'm a board member and I know we're going to do strategic planning and we go into those, I'm dreading it until the day we get into the room, because I know there's the opportunity for it to just be horrible. And I'm also sure that I'm like the facilitator's nightmare as well, because I've done enough of these and I've been on both sides of it too, that I ask the wrong question at the wrong time. I needle people over stupid questions. I'm like, I'm the board member. You just like, can we put tape over his mouth? Is that possible? It's just, either that or I'll just sit in the corner with my arms crossed like I'm not doing this today. So I apologize for all the facilitators that I've hassled over the years.
That body language, Andy, is the worst. Oh, I'm just going to tell you, there's nothing that sort of hurts my little facilitator heart more than that.
Yep. Sorry. I apologize. I'll do better.
Hey there, big thank you to you. We love that you listened to another episode. I'm curious to know where you listen to us from. Like, I'm always curious to know, is it like a very typical, like you're walking or you're jogging, you're driving, like where are you listening to us? So that would be kind of fun for you to drop us a little message and tell us, because maybe we'll like send a sticker to the person who shares the most interesting place, but hopefully it's not gross. Like, hopefully you're not listening to us while you're in the bathroom, right? Like that's always the worst. Although, yeah, I understand that's the reality. Sometimes, nature calls. So with that, I just really just want to say thank you more than anything else. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you for your questions. We see you in a couple of weeks.